Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here at the 11th International Conference on Second Language Studies. My name is Esmanur ÇELİKER, and I'm pleased to present my research titled The Implementation of 21st Century Skills, Barriers, and Instructor Views. This study delves into how English language instructors in Turkish tertiary level EFL settings perceive and apply these crucial skills and the challenges they encounter. That's a quick photo of me. Let me share a little about myself. As I said, I am Esmanur ÇELİKER, a researcher and instructor specializing in English language teaching. My work is particularly focused on curriculum development, the integration of 21st century skills, and innovative pedagogical practices within tertiary level EFL contexts. I've gained teaching experience in foundation universities here in Turkey, where I have also been involved in institutional projects related to educational technology and professional development. My recent research has concentrated on identifying both systemic and instructional barriers that hinder the implementation of 21st century competencies in EFL programs. I'm a strong advocate for student-centered learning, practical teacher training, and the use of formative assessment practices. I aim to continue contributing to academic discussions about the future of education and to bridge the gap between theoretical frameworks and the realities of the classroom. Let's begin with the introduction. The modern world today demands much more than just academic knowledge. For students to truly thrive in real-life settings, they must develop skills such as critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and digital literacy. These are what we refer to as 21st century skills, and they are absolutely essential in our current global technology-driven society. Now, within the EFL classrooms, integrating these skills presents both significant opportunities and considerable challenges. While many instructors understand the inherent value of these skills, the actual shift toward more student-centered learning and skill-based teaching is complex. The shift is often constrained by traditional curricula, established assessment methods, and sometimes limited institutional support. This particular study explores how these 21st century skills are understood and implemented within a Turkish tertiary level EFL context. It aims to identify the main barriers that instructors face and, importantly, highlights the pressing need for structural adjustments in our educational systems, targeted teacher training programs, and broader institutional alignment to fully and effectively integrate these competencies into everyday educational practice. Turning to the literature. Existing research shows that while instructors generally understand the importance of 21st century skills, their actual implementation in EFL classrooms is met with a variety of challenges. For example, Tümen Akyıldız and Şahin highlight significant differences between private and public schools, often due to unequal access to vital sources such as digital tools and instructional time. However, it is important to note that even in well-resourced settings, student resistance to student-centered learning approaches can also be an obstacle. Further, Kafes and Bilben found that although Turkish instructors are familiar with 21st century skills, they often struggle to apply them effectively in their teaching. Similarly, Al-Arbi noted in Saudi Arabia that challenges such as large class sizes and the use of outdated assessment tools hinder the implementation of these skills. In Malaysia, research by Mohammed and Seng indicates that teachers often focus on certain skills like ICT literacy, while unfortunately overlooking others such as problem solving. Other barriers identified in the literature include rigid curricula, a lack of teacher autonomy, limited opportunities for professional development, and sometimes cultural attitudes that may undervalue skills like critical thinking, as noted by Ekinci and Mehdi Benabet. In summary, while awareness of these skills generally exists among educators, their effective integration is heavily dependent on institutional flexibility, ongoing and relevant training, as well as practical classroom support. This brings us to my study. This research investigates the challenges and perceptions related to implementing 21st century skills in tertiary level EFL classrooms, specifically in Turkey. It focuses on how instructors understand these skills, how they apply them, and the support they receive in integrating these skills into their teaching practices. A quantitative pilot study was conducted using an online survey, which was adapted from UNESCO Bangkok office's framework on transversal competencies. This survey included demographic questions and sections on classroom practices, curriculum constraints, professional development experiences, and instructors' familiarity with various 21st century skills. 18 EFL instructors from a foundation university in Istanbul participated in this study. They were selected through convenience sampling. The aim was not only to explore the institutional and instructional barriers, but also to delve into the instructors' actual classroom practices, their perceptions of the support available to them, and their training needs concerning the development of 21st century skills. Ultimately, this study seeks to offer practical insights that can inform a more effective integration of these vital skills in higher education EFL contexts. The study was guided by these key research questions. What are the main barriers to implementing 21st century skills in tertiary level EFL classrooms in Turkey? How do EFL instructors perceive and understand 21st century skills, and how does this understanding reflect in their classroom practices? To what extent do current curriculum designs and assessment systems support the integration of 21st century skills in higher education EFL contexts? And what types of professional development and institutional support are needed to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application? In terms of methodology, this study employed a quantitative pilot design to explore EFL instructors' perceptions. The participants, as mentioned, were 18 instructors from a foundation university's School of Foreign Languages in Istanbul, selected via convenience sampling. These participants had diverse academic qualifications and varying years of teaching experience, which provided a good range of perspectives. The instrument used was an online survey adapted from the UNESCO Bangkok office's framework on transversal competencies. It included multiple choice, checkbox, and Likert scale questions. These questions focused on several key areas: the instructor's familiarity with 21st century skills, their current classroom practices and curriculum demands, the assessment methods they use, and their professional development experiences. For data collection, the survey was distributed via WhatsApp. Participants completed it voluntarily and in a relaxed, self-paced manner, which helps ensure more thoughtful responses. The collected data were then analyzed using descriptive statistics to identify patterns in their perceptions and practices. Now, let's look at the results. The survey involved 18 EFL instructors at a Turkish foundation university. Most of these instructors demonstrated an understanding of the concept of 21st century skills and recognized the importance of critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. However, an interesting finding was that only 39% of them identified ICT literacy specifically as a 21st century skill, which reveals certain gaps in awareness. Despite having access to resources, many instructors reported that they struggled with packed curricula and limited time, both of which hindered the integration of student-centered tasks. Group projects and presentations were generally seen as the most effective methods for developing these skills. Instructors also expressed a clear need for clearer guidance and guidelines from their institutions and more flexible assessment tools. Also, while most agreed on the value of 21st century skills, there was an observed inconsistency in institutional emphasis on these skills alongside insufficient parental and administrative support. Moving into the discussion. The findings from this study echo a broader trend often seen in EFL education. Instructors are generally willing and aware, but systemic barriers significantly hinder effective integration of these skills. Unlike some public institutions that might face resource limitations, this study setting generally had technological access. Yet, the curriculum's rigidity, pressures from assessment methods, and overall workload still limited innovation in the classroom. Teachers often face a mismatch between their pedagogical goals and what they can realistically implement in their classrooms. Despite their motivation to incorporate 21st century skills, they frequently default to more traditional, exam-focused methods, primarily due to time constraints and administrative burdens. The study also revealed a significant disconnection between the training teachers receive and their actual classroom needs. Many instructors felt underprepared in applying theory to practice and expressed a requirement for more practical, content-specific training. These insights strongly emphasize the need for institutional reform to better align teaching conditions with 21st century skills and 21st century educational goals. So, what are the implications of these findings? To bridge the gap between awareness and practice, institutions must revise both their curricula and their teacher training models. Curricula should be made more flexible, reduce the emphasis on rote testing, and critically allow dedicated time for project-based and collaborative learning activities. Professional development for teachers must be ongoing, highly practical, and directly aligned with classroom realities. Interestingly, model classrooms, mentoring programs, and peer collaboration emerged from the data as preferred training formats by the instructors themselves. Institutions should also focus on integrating formative assessment tools such as peer reviews, student portfolios, and presentations, as these are much more supportive of developing 21st century skills. Beyond the classroom, stakeholders' support is absolutely critical. Parents, administrators, and local communities must all understand the long-term value that these skills bring to students. By effectively aligning policy, infrastructure, and professional learning opportunities, EFL education can truly prepare students for the complexities of modern challenges. Looking forward, this study suggests several avenues for further research. It would be beneficial to expand the sample size and diversity by including instructors from both public and private universities across different regions of Turkey, which would help to improve the generalizability of the findings. Conducting longitudinal studies could help us track the long-term effects of 21st century skills integration on both student outcomes and teaching practices. Additionally, incorporating mixed method approaches such as interviews or classroom observations would allow for deeper insight into the persistent gap between theory and practice. Further research should also investigate students' and administrators' perspectives to obtain a more comprehensive understanding of institutional readiness and the various cultural influences at play. It would be valuable to explore the effectiveness of different training modalities, for instance, model classrooms, peer mentoring, and online modules, in better preparing teachers for skill-based instruction. Finally, examining the impact of revised curricula and formative assessment strategies on the successful implementation of 21st century skills in EFL contexts would be a crucial next step. In conclusion, integrating 21st century skills into EFL education effectively requires a multifaceted approach. It is about fostering systemic change, providing targeted and practical training for our educators, and ensuring robust support from all stakeholders. With these elements in place, we can empower our students not just for academic success, but for lifelong learning and active participation in the modern world. Thank you very much for your attention and have a wonderful day.